the work you've been doing recently is like so fascinating. So I want to just talk about it. Can you just share a little bit about your journey and how you got here?
Sure. Well, when I was a child, I was fascinated by the mind, by consciousness. I didn't know what to call it back then, but I knew there was something else going on that we had connection to, but didn't know how to really grasp it. I was reading all the magazines. At 11 years old, I had a subscription to Psychology Today magazine, just trying to understand how we process thought and how to read other people's thoughts if possible.
And this is
And somewhere
what age? It's so young.
yeah, I just loved it. It was, to me, an understanding that fringe science back then wasn't called fringe science, but it just seemed like everything made sense that we always had like something that came off of the physical. And I knew that at an early age. I think probably most kids do, except we're told it's fiction.
I was like,
Um,
but
you do. Yeah. So somewhere around the age of 10, 11, 12 years old, I started having really bad intestinal issues, pains, stabbing pains. And along with that, my brother had the same. So my mom at some point took us to the doctor and ended up, we were diagnosed with colitis, IBD, and well, my brother was told he needed surgery. And that's when we met this healer who was a chiropractor. And he said to my mom, give me a few months. And if your kids aren't better, do surgery. But if it's not an emergency, don't make surgery your first option. And after a few months, we both got better.
wow.
And yeah, and now at this point, I want to learn because if I'm told you have no other options, that's 100% the law. And suddenly someone says, hey, here's the other option, and it works. Basically, I said, I want to learn how to do this. And he said, if you go to chiropractic school, I will teach you because I don't want you to just be a healer. I want you to have a doctor in front of your name so it's more accepted by the world. And we'd spend a lot of time in his office and, and his name, a lot of people have heard of him now. He works very often with Tony Robbins. His name is Donnie Epstein. And he developed a beautiful
Yeah.
system. And so since then, once you're opened up, once I'll call it your antenna, your nervous system is finely tuned, you become very aware of other things, other frequencies, other noticings. When you create stillness in your system, it's like being in the woods. If it's raining, you're not going to hear a big animal coming towards you because there's so much noise. But when the woods are very quiet, you'll hear every twig snapping. And that's what it's like when you start to calm your system and you meditate, you get your mind relaxed, you start to become aware of other things. And so that's what happened. It just you aware, and next thing you know, you are developing your own work.
That's so interesting. I didn't know this. I just thought you came from a family of healers because I know it runs in your family that a few of you have these healing gifts. And I just thought it was something that was like passed down through the lineages of the Kalatsky family that I didn't know it came from the source.
Yeah, well, it could be in the lineage, but something's got to wake you up to the lineage,
Yes.
right? And so I think having someone else close to you that also does the work is very much it's like you get to sync up to new levels because every time my brother Dan would notice something new, soon after I would notice it. Or anytime I would notice things soon after he would know. It was always kind of like they say Albert Einstein would figure out how to do something with nuclear, and then next thing you know, another scientist around the world would figure it out. Like it becomes like this awareness in consciousness where others start to, it's now more available in the conscious realm once a few people figure it out.
Wow.
So chiropractic school, then practicing in New York for many years where we met,
Yes.
and having an amazing practice in New York where I was always kind of in like sort of like this underground kind of thing. I was working with a lot of people from the entertainment industry, and um yeah, it was amazing, the people I would meet. And because it's a very intuitive kind of work, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I went to a hair salon called Bumble and Bumble. Do you remember that place?
Patty's always going to bumble and bumble. Yes, of course.
The coat check girl, it was winter time. She was in pain. I could see it. And I said to her, why don't you come see me in the office? And she said, well, I can't afford it. And I said, just come see me, pay whatever you can. And that was the greatest gift ever because For $25 that she gave me, she started referring every client who went into Bumble and Bumble to see me.
Oh my God.
And you can imagine what that led to. And so that was really great. And from there, you just develop and develop and develop. And now here I am in Miami and just kind of getting to do a lot of cool things over Zoom, partially because of COVID and just realizing that things could happen from a distance as effectively as in person for a lot of different things.
I mean, that's so
So,
amazing that you can help people around the world. It's a bonus that they can see you in person, but just the idea that, someone in Europe or Asia or anywhere can just have this experience with you. So that's really, really amazing. And also you're the creator of the intuition method. You have the book and
yes.
also explain what it is exactly. How does it make people feel better? How does it help them to heal? Is it
Okay.
something we can
Yeah.
do on our own, the intuition?
Yeah, that's the idea. The
Hmm.
book is a template. It's full of exercises so people can actually learn how to become aware of their inner voice, right? Intuition, the original, the archaic root in Webster Dictionary of tuition is actually guardian, right?
Ah,
We think of it as paying for school, which you can assume school is your guardian, maybe, but intuition is your inner guardian. So it was somewhere back around 2018, and I had all kinds of people in New York coming to my office debating about politics all the time. And I found the only difference between the two of them was which TV channel they watched. If they watched one station, they argued this. If they watched one station, they argued this. But no one had an opinion of their own except based on that. So I realized I was already teaching a lot of people how to tap into their intuition. So I just started writing and writing. And one thing from tapping into your inner knowing consciously to a whole book on how to feel energy, move energy, see energy, become aware of others, how to control your one of the biggest comments I get in the book is the part about for empaths that are victims. I can't go to this place. It's too much energy. People, I'm going to feel everyone's pain.
I
And
hear
so I
that
have a
all
whole
the
little,
time. Yeah, you
yeah,
have to know how to clear yourself and how not to do that. I remember when I used to do energy work on people, I became a massage therapist. And also I was certified in Reiki when I was 18. And then I got my massage therapy license when I was 21. And I didn't know how to clear in between. I would maybe try to meditate a little, but I would pick up headaches from people. I would pick up stomach aches. It was honestly overwhelming for me that I couldn't do the work anymore. I think at this point in time, I would have much better tools, which you do, to be able to work on people and not pick all of that up. But yes, there's so many empaths and they need to learn how to put a bubble around themselves and shield themselves and work as a practitioner, but not become so attached to everyone's
right.
pain.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's some of the biggest feedback. All the cool things I teach on how to see auras and the exercises to make you more sensitive to your environment. But the empaths come back and say, oh my God, I cannot believe this works. Now I can go into a room with 100 people and not feel overwhelmed. And it's not as much about a shielding as a shifting of awareness. And it's an easy process. It's so simple. You're just moving from your feeling center to your observer center. And by doing that, suddenly you're not in your emotions anymore. And you can step in when you want to connect to somebody.
Well, that's so interesting because I don't know if it's really connected, but there are people who have a lot of sensitivities, maybe not in the terms of being empaths, but maybe they have food sensitivities or chemical sensitivities. They can't go out in a place that maybe has fragrances, or they can't be in a nail salon, and they're not, is it really the condition, or is it that they don't know how to shield themselves? And I found with nervous system work, which I do with people and I've done myself, and I used to be one of these very sensitive people. I can go into these situations and not be so affected. And I think
Right.
I don't know if there's a parallel with that, with working on the nervous system and not being affected in terms of the external stressors that can set someone off, or being an empath and not being affected by being in a crowded place with weird energies and not being affected.
Definitely, definitely. Now, I don't want to go into a nail salon because, I know the chemicals are not good to
Yeah,
smell,
yeah.
but you can definitely shift awareness. I mean, have you read Carlos Castaneda at all
I
over the years?
I have it
But
now.
yeah, all of his books talk about, he meets with this shaman in Mexico and he was a bestseller. And they call it the assemblage point. If you want to shift your awareness, move your assemblage point, your main point of energy in your body. Let's move it to a new area, and you're not going to have the same experience.
Well, that's like the idea of chi. You know, I found that doing a lot of Tai Chi and Qigong when you're moving the chi throughout your body and you strengthen so much that it's almost like a
Yes,
protective barrier from all of this too. So it all ties together, and I love this energy work and learning more about it. And I think the consciousness like of humanity as a whole, I think we're becoming a lot more open and seeing the effect that energy has on our everyday lifestyle and how that impacts
yes,
health and how we have blockages, and it's very real. And as much as we can eat the right diet or we can exercise, we still could have these energetic blockages that need clearing, and that's when
for
people
sure.
that come in can really do amazing stuff. So
That's yes. That, in reference to that, I work with a lot of the people that go to Dr. Joe Dispenza's events,
mhm,
right? And Dr. Joe's events are amazing. I've been to them. I'm a huge fan.
totally.
What I also find is, though, a lot of people are stuck, they're tethered to their beliefs of unworthiness, of lack, and it makes it much harder to change your frequency to the place you want to be, to vibrate in that place of abundance and love and all the good things, because you're hooked into the part that believes something else. And so the field of consciousness work itself ties into that, because when we clear those negative patterns. And so it's kind of an amazing thing. And I can tell you more about that. But just to see how energy and our vibrations and our beliefs tie into everything we do, every single moment.
I mean, I know people in my life that I've seen, and they're perfectly able and come off intelligent. They're educated, and maybe they're having trouble attracting a really good job. And you're like, but I don't get it. Like, this person has all of the skills, or someone who maybe would look very desirable on paper for having a romantic connection with somebody, but for whatever reason, they're not attracting, they're repelling. There's something energetically that's going on. And
Yeah,
to be able to clear that, because it's this like invisible frequency that is so real. And
right.
the stronger that I notice, because I've been doing so much Tai Chi and Qigong and building up my life force, and the things that I attract, I feel like I attracted you, like the way we even reconnected. All these healers have popped into my life over the past 2 years, I would say. And then we connected, and it's something about
Mm,
the frequencies that we're all sort of drawn to each other. It's like this invisible frequency that we're
right.
kind of like looping in this
Yes.
well, it's really cool. It's really cool to see just happen in front of your eyes. So that's why I think it's good for people to
It
understand
is amazing. It is amazing.
raise your vibration.
And that's what I call, in the book, I write a lot about luck and coincidence, because what luck actually is, when we believe we're lucky, we actually are victimizing ourselves instead of
Yeah.
empowering ourselves, because luck is actually your very subconscious sending you to a place without telling you where you're going or why, because it has a surprise for you that's going to benefit you. And when you say, I'm so lucky, you're missing out on saying to yourself, wow, I'm so powerful, because you're not just being given a gift, you're actually giving yourself the gift. And coincidence is the same way. You're being sent to a place that is meant for you to reconnect with someone, right? And there's no coincidence that in 2 days two people said, oh, you two need to reconnect. And this is like, wow,
I
that's
know. If
amazing.
things come up, then we both happen to be in Miami at the same time. Boom, that weekend we're already meeting, and then we're
Yep.
we're talking here. So
Yes.
it's so wild how that happens.
Yeah.
And so getting back to your work, could you actually like clear pain in a single session?
Yes. Depends on what the pain is. If we're talking about emotional pain, I do it every single day. Um,
Okay, okay. So there's emotional pain and physical pain. So I know like
right.
you're very good with migraines, but you do other things as well. So like
Yes.
if someone, let's say, has something that's chronic, would like how long are there people that after one session they're like, oh my gosh, like this was like life changing. I was having this frozen shoulder, or my had this terrible migraine. I'm like, wow, I'm really seeing some difference, even in just doing that over Zoom.
Well, it depends on the session, on the person and the session.
Okay.
It depends. So chronic means a long-standing pattern, which means a long-standing frequency.
Mhm.
right? So what we're actually doing is we're changing patterns of energy. We're changing frequencies. So the other day there was a nurse who had a scapula issue that was just very painful. She was like, I don't know what to do. I've had this for 3 months. It's driving me nuts. It's not a long pattern, but it's long to her. It's not like 20 years of migraines.
Right.
Well, and we were in the same location. I said, "Oh, let me take a quick look at that for you." And I just, put my hands around her and started kind of moving the energy and then had her move her shoulder again. And she was so much better. She started telling me more about her life. She works in hospice. We started talking. And one of the things I've wanted to go to hospice and volunteer maybe once a month just to help people ease pain and feel better. And so it led to this beautiful connection. And I checked her with her yesterday. So it's about a week later. And she said her scapula, her shoulder is so much better. She doesn't even know what to think. So that's in person. Over Zoom, what I find is certain things that may have been 50% effective over Zoom, but not as fast. So the other day I was in the hospital. Somebody was there who fell on their head, and he was getting some, it was a brain bleed situation. Talk about coincidence. You wouldn't believe it. But uh, um, he asked me, when I did some work to clear the mind and clear the energy, and he said, I feel like I just meditated for like 20 minutes. This is amazing. He fell asleep for a second. And I said, yeah. And he said, so over Zoom, this is what you can do for me before I go into a meeting to clear my mind. And I said, well, over Zoom it would probably take 12 minutes, while in person it takes 3 to 4 minutes. But nevertheless, 12 minutes is still pretty good to clear any
Absolutely.
erratic
Me?
static.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think most people would agree
Right.
12 minutes is not that long.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and how do you is there science that could explain this, or is this quantum physics? Is
Mhm.
there a way to, I guess, for someone who's like, okay, like, is it just is a gift that you have, or is there something scientific behind it?
Well, I think the gift is that I'm sensitive enough to notice patterns. Like you, as an expert in nutrition, Tai Chi, you're going to notice somebody's movement might be off, like I might, but in a different way. Yours might be a different, more like Tai Chi kind of flow, and you're feeling something's not right. Or with nutrition, you might get a sense of something that they're taking that's just a little off and you don't exactly know how you know. So for me, pattern recognition is really big. And
Yeah.
so if I'm working on someone, I might just put my hands on them or even over Zoom and say, "Oh, no, you think the pain you're feeling, I know it feels like you're frustrated, but really you're lonely." And they say, "Oh my God, you're right." Right? So it's like tuning into it's somebody who's really good at music, who can listen and hear a tune and know exactly what chord is being played. I wouldn't know that. But I know there are experts who could, and they're using their ears. And so mine is, my understanding of emotions is just like our eyes process light waves and create images, and our ears process sound waves and hear sounds, but our ears don't process light waves and see images.
There's
Our bodies, right, our bodies literally are processing emotional waves or waves that are emotional, and then once they hit us we perceive them as emotions, and that in our body changes everything. It changes to joy or it changes to stress or anger, and then we can hold it for years. I mean, Danielle, how many times when you're angry at someone you're like, yeah, you should be angry at them, hold on to that anger, you keep going. Little do we know we're raising our cortisol levels, we're getting wrinkles, we're aging because we're holding anger when we don't have to hold it. It's just a frequency that gets stuck to our container.
absolutely. So when that's happening, do you find that you see people, do they have a, like, do they cry, or do you see a shaking? Do you see some kind of
Mm.
emotional release that occurs as
Um,
people are letting things out?
when I work on somebody in person, more often, if it's more hands-on, because they don't know what to expect, the body can just erupt, let it out, tears, sometimes laughter. When I do the field of consciousness work over Zoom, it's very, very interesting or even in person, because there's no touch. And it feels like it's very yin energy, as you know. It's more of a feminine where you almost don't feel it until it's done. The more I work with you, the more you'll feel it. People will understand, that there's energy moving and they'll feel the rewiring happening. But if you feel, I'll give you an example. One woman I worked with, I was doing some free trial sessions for people with the most extreme traumas. Whoever, there had to be a level that really shocked me or moved me when I heard the story. So one woman was kidnapped
Oh.
and for 10 hours sexually abused.
Mm.
And she couldn't leave her house. And we did a session, and suddenly, in between the rounds of clearing the energetic patterns, I'll ask the person, so think about the situation now. How does it feel? And what happens is it slips away. You can't find the feeling anymore. It's just gone. Like, wait a minute. I have the memory of this story, but there's no emotions attached to it anymore. This is so strange. And so with that, there's no tears. There's no, it's a huge smile on your face. I mean, she allowed me to use the information for testimonials. So there's videos of her talking about it. And it's like somebody just wiped the drive of the feelings of the situation. So there's no more trauma. From there, once the space is open and you feel like, oh my God, there's this vast space inside of my mind, then we do a little bit of other steps and then install the program you want. So when we talk about frequency, we're installing what you want. Now that your system's open, let's have you think about how you would want to feel if life was perfect. What do you want in your life? That perfect relationship? Good. Close your eyes and I'll lead people through visualization while I'm expanding the energetics of their heart and their mind. And next thing you know, they feel like they're this new person, which makes them this new person.
Right. The visualization aspect is so important. I think it's so underutilized, and especially in the chronic illness community, I see this so much. And I always say, like, you have to see yourself well in order to heal. You have to be able to visualize it. And it's something that a lot of people like know, like they follow Joe Dispenza, they understand it conceptually in their brain, but they're not doing the practices. So to really get that into people's minds, like you have to do the work, so you can be a vehicle to help to open them up to this type of thing, or I can help them to open up. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that we need to continue to do on ourselves, and I think it'll only make the process better, and it'll just complement the kind of work that you do. So that's
Right.
really, really cool. um,
hmm
and what would you say are some practical tips that listeners can do to stay in touch with their intuition?
Oh, well, one of the underrated exercises in my book, right? There's the main exercise is called the foundational breath technique that teaches you to use your breath to access your intuition. And breath is one of the things that's always with us,
Mhm.
right? It's one of the things we can control to some extent consciously, right? You can hold your breath for maybe 2 minutes. You can breathe faster or slower. But you can't hold your breath for too long or your subconscious is going to take over. You're going to pass out and you're going to start to breathe again. Right. So, because our breath is a direct connection to the subconscious, I teach an exercise that allows you to notice the differences in your breath based on what you're doing. Now, at first, it starts out with less subtle, right? If you're upset, you might be breathing fast or not breathing at all or breathing shallow. And if you're really happy, you might be going, oh my God, and you feel these deep, beautiful, full breaths. But there are so many levels in between, right? There's the breath when you watch a scary movie, there's the breath when someone touches you that you're not expecting. There's so many. And when you start to notice the differences, so I give simple exercises to notice when something bad for you, how do you breathe? When something's good for you, how do you breathe? And then you start to fine tune the knob until you go shopping for food and you reach for something on the shelf and you feel your breathing changes. And you say, oh, I just noticed that pattern. My breathing just, and that's the goal of the exercise, to get you to notice the subtle shifts in your breath until it's normal. And you say, oh, and then you read the ingredients and say, oh my God, there's sucralose or aspartame in there. I had no idea. I never read the ingredients. So that's step
Think
one.
that
It gives you
it
the,
helps them to pause and really take note of even like reading something as simple as on a label, like just to be more in the present of paying attention to what is going on.
100%. And that's step number one, is to be in the present. But as you learn to trust your breath, it becomes an intuitive mechanism, right? Because intuition is simply a skill that we all have, and we can't necessarily define how we access it. But in this case, now you know it's your breath. It goes from now you have a yes and a no. Should I go to this meeting? Should I prepare? To it develops further into now not just an A and a B, but now it's actually a word. Now it's a sentence. Now it's a paragraph in a book. And now you're getting full-blown stories that might be helpful for you that are what some would call psychic, but really your mind is just giving you more information because you're working with it just the way you might train a pet.
I think we really do know. It's interesting how we do have this intuition, but we ignore it because we want to think with our heads rather than feel with our bodies. And it can be in so many situations, but I see this in relationships or noticing red flags
Mhm.
or even when you're dealing with a medical situation and you're going to a doctor and you're on a protocol, but you're kind of feeling like it just something doesn't feel kosher, it just like doesn't feel right with
Right.
you. And it's kind of like being able to, when you're present and you're breathing, you feel it in your gut and you're just like, no, this is not the path that I want to take. And it's amazing that, you're so tuned into it. And I've become a lot better myself, but I think everyone really has that ability and using the breath, that's a very good tip because like we already have the answers and we think many times we need to go to a psychic or somebody to tell us what's going to happen and it's like sometimes it's really within us and that can save
Mhm.
us. It's so important to trust
For
yourself.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I've tested it. I don't test it anymore, but I had such a strong no about doing something. And I said, oh my God, this is so strong. I cannot believe how strong this is. I've got to do it to see what's going to happen. And boy, what a lesson that was. I mean, if I couldn't have gotten myself out of that situation fast enough and safe, I mean, and I don't need to know. I'll never know all of the things that are not happening to me because I'm just listening to my intuition.
Yes, even now, if I try to lower my load of supplements. I used to be super into supplements, and now I don't take as many. But when I do take one, it's like I hold the bottle and I just close my eyes and breathe and feel like, is this really something that's safe for me? Do I need this? Or even I don't
Mhm.
take many medications, not like hardly ever, but if I'm given something for a reason, it's like is this gonna sit well with my body? And you kind of like know. And then if I don't listen to myself, because maybe I've talked to a practitioner who's like, no, it's gonna be great for you. Like, just trust me on this. And then you take
Yes.
it and you're like, freaking knew it. Like, why didn't I listen to my gut? So I think we all should really start just being more mindful of doing that. So that's
Yeah. Yeah. And those I freaking knew it's are the lessons so
yeah,
that we don't do it again.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. So where can people find you, find your book? Let us know that information. Do you have a website?
Yes. Let's see. My book is at intuitionmethod.com.
Show it to you again. The Intuition Method.
Into the intuition method, intuitionmethod.com. And for field of consciousness healing work, it's you can go to fieldofconsciousness.com or easier spelling healthefield.com.
And
And those two will take,
Instagram, people want to follow you too.
oh, Instagram, yeah, is william.kalatsky.
Great.
So those are the easiest ways. I wanted to tell you, you asked before about the science behind this work.
Yes.
And and I wanted to jump back to that because the science, it's if you look on PubMed and the research, you'll find biofield studies, and that's what they call it in the medical studies. There's not a lot of well-funded projects around this because, obviously, for funding, it means someone's got to be able to make that money back if there's going to be studies of it. So, one of the things about it that's super scientific is that it's so reproducible.
Mm.
Now, just like we don't exactly know how electricity works, but it's reproducible when you flip the switch, it's kind of like that. Like we're getting the results over and over again across the board. But because of that, I was so fortunate that I got invited now to be part of the research at Mount Sinai Hospital.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
yes, for the work that I'm doing. And so I have my first meeting in April, and it's basically going to be a data collection. We're going to find out what brain waves are doing, what EKG waves are doing, um, across the board wellness assessments to understand why someone can be in so much pain emotionally or physically, and then suddenly in less than an hour, they're just feeling better, and maybe the problem doesn't return for days, months, or ever.
I think
So
I think
that's very
such
exciting.
a like a hospital. like that is so allopathic and traditional would be open-minded to this. Like that is major progress. That's exactly what we need. And that's so many physicians are afraid that if we start introducing these modalities, it's going to ruin their practice in some way or be contradiction, but really it's a compliment because if you can do this and you're working with someone who's caring for you and you're combining it together, the goal is really to heal at the end of the day. So if all of this together collectively can really make such a difference and help people's health, like why not? Why are we not trying to, help humanity? So I'm so happy that you're working with an organization like Mount Sinai. Like that's huge. That's going to be really huge. So,
Okay. I think a lot of it is what we're talking about, like intervention of divinity to say, oh, you're meeting the right people who are interested in this, and they're involved in the research department, and they're open to it, right? Because somebody else in a different location maybe would say, I don't know. So the right pieces come together at the right time, and that's what happens. There's another place out here in Miami that asked me to work with them called the Biohack Lab, and they
mm,
have a beautiful trauma program for emotions, and it's all technology, brainwave patterns, clearings, and they just asked me if I'd come and be the human component of that trauma program for clearing those emotional patterns and frequencies that um, cause people a life of distress, way back to childhood. Or, as I tell people, when we're clearing these patterns, if you got bit by a dog when you're 6 years old and the rest of your life you have a fear of dogs, you don't need to live with that. You're missing out on the love of dogs, but you're also, every time you see a dog, you go into a fear response.
yeah.
Maybe you stay away from places because there are dogs. So it's putting borders on your life that don't need to be there just because you're stuck in one frequency that you can't get out of until you have the right help.
Right. And trauma and stored emotions is just, you go to a doctor's visit, you're feeling bad. It's just kind of like, okay, you have a stomach ache, like, we'll treat you for that. Like, it doesn't go into the emotions other than maybe saying, oh, yeah, maybe stress related and, you need to take an antidepressant. But it's not about that. It's really about the release. And that seems to be what you're so focused on and where, in my opinion, I think medicine needs to go today, where we need to really integrate that because it is years of trauma that just accumulate in people's bodies. And I see that people who have something chronic, or just anxiety, not grounded, all these type of things that I work with every day. And
Yeah.
it's like you start to really talk to the person. That's why I always ask about their history. Like I don't want to just know their symptoms. I want to know their story because the
Yes,
trauma gives you so many clues. And
exactly.
we can't ignore that. So I I really am excited to see how things continue to grow with you and how all of this work turns out. And I have to do my session because, all of us have
Mm.
some
Yes.
trauma. You can pull some more out of me. And
Yes.
for everyone who didn't hear before, Dr. William Kalatsky, and say your website one more time.
Fieldofconsciousness.com or healthefield.com.
Okay.
And the intuition method is at intuitionmethod.com.
Okay, terrific. Well, it was great chatting with you. I'm sure we'll have another conversation soon. And
Yeah.
best of luck to you.
Thank you, Danielle. It's great to see you.